Good afternoon, everybody, on this beautiful fall, but really summer day in Brookline. I'm Susan Howards. I'm a criminal defense attorney with an office on Washington Street in Brookline, and I host the Safety Brookline Interactive Groups show dedicated to educating the public about domestic violence and many, many other issues that are vital to our community. The content of this show are strictly mine and the guests. It is not Big's, but we're grateful to Big and to Dominic for being our producer and making it all happen. Today's really unusual and long overdue. Our guest today is Ruthann Dobek, director of the Brookline Senior Center, located on Winchester Street in Brookline. Welcome, Ruthann.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you for agreeing to do this, and it is long overdue. Tell us a little bit about how you became involved with those of us as we progress through life. That's how I like to phrase it. Many of the other terms really don't, they sort of make me feel uncomfortable because I never admitted that I was an elder until I am an elder. Anyway, how did you get involved in this?
Sure. There is an expression, if you scratch almost any gerontologist, they will cite a wonderful relationship with a grandparent or another older adult in their life. And I am no different. I had the great fortune of living when I was born in a two-family house, and my grandmother was the downstairs neighbor, and we were upstairs. And she was my beloved grandmother who really taught me values of kindness, that humanity, goodness in the world, and giving back. And when I was in college, it was another time of recession and jobs were tough. And one summer I had no job opportunities. Even the malls weren't hiring or fast food. And our neighbor was an administrator in a nursing home. And he said, we always need help. And I went in with great trepidation. I had never set foot in a nursing home. My grandmother had been in good health. We no longer lived in the same two-family, but she was independent and gardening and living life to its fullest. So I went into that nursing home as a junior in college, and were my eyes open. Susan, you as an advocate can relate. The conditions were not good.
Yep.
There wasn't enough care, everything. And I actually wrote a letter to the editor. It was I lived in Connecticut, to the Hartford Courant. It actually made the front page of the Courant as I wrote about how dreadful the conditions were and didn't have to be, in a nursing home. And then when I went back to my campus, it was in Clark University in Worcester. And the consortiums of schools with UMass Medical had a program on gerontology. And I was walking around campus not knowing what I was going to do for the rest of my life. But after having that experience, I was like, oh, I'll go to a lecture. And the first lecture was on elder abuse and domestic violence. That was
just what we talked about, presenting at the Senior Center today. Oh my gosh.
Exactly. So that was the very first lecture that I attended at UMass Medical School on the field, and I was hooked, and then applied to graduate school in social work at BU with a specialty in gerontology, and the rest, as they say, was history.
And how many years have you been committed? And you are certainly committed to this area of the world. How many years?
So I've been working for the town of Brookline, the Council on Aging, for 40 years this August.
Congratulations to you. That's quite a commitment.
I've had 4 different jobs, I like to say, at this Council on Aging. So, started as a clinical social worker, really dealing with the cases. And that's what gives me insight into what you're very interested in, the abuse and domestic violence issues.
Underreported, Ruthann. I think you know that. Totally.
Yes, I
Anyway,
know.
really underreported. Okay.
Very much a concern. And then my next job was as the volunteer and staff coordinator. And then I was moved to an assistant director position, helping build the senior center.
I remember those days.
Yes, and then director since the year 2002. So the last 21 years has been as director.
Wow. Well, we're really lucky to have you. And quite frankly, the senior center has just blossomed and blossomed and blossomed. I want you to tell us a little about the scope of the programs you offer, because to be very honest, I was familiar with the senior center because you're a neighbor. I've attended some of your exercise classes, which are fabulous, and lectures, but I really didn't know very much about the scope of the programs and the outreach that you provide to the community. And I don't think I'm alone. So tell us about the scope of the programs and how you decide on, say, new programs or to discard a program.
So the way that we describe, and I'm going to spend a second on the distinction between the Council on Aging and then the Senior Center, the Brookline Senior Center. So the Council on Aging is the agency, the arm of the town that takes care of senior issues. And the way we describe it is that when you come to live in the town of Brookline, you have wonderful schools, police, fire, library, and we're the arm for anyone over the age of 60 and their families to receive elder care. And with that, the Council on Aging operates the Brookline Senior Center, which is situated as your neighbor on Winchester Street.
Right.
But the Council on Aging's arm and the scope is to provide elder care services for anyone in the town of Brookline who's over the age of 60. And with that, we go into people's homes. We provide home care for people, laundry, housekeeping, companionship, those types of tasks. Our social workers provide home visits. We do transportation. We have very large elder resources, everything from information to equipment loans. So
Yes.
if people need a wheelchair or a cane or anything like that, that's also available. And all of that is, all throughout town. And then at the senior center, like you said, is where we have our programs and services. So you're right, it's very wide breadth of services and programs. And what I thought we could do is just go through a little bit, Susan, of the demographics of who.
Absolutely. Yes, please do.
Town.
That's very valuable. Yeah, go ahead.
Because it's taken us until this year to actually get the 2020 updated census data. And
Right.
we now know that there are 13,222 residents over the age of 60 living in Brookline as of 2020.
2020, right.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's a 22% increase over 2010. So the senior population back in 2010 was 10,800. So again, there's been a growth in the senior population. And what we see is that those people over the age of 80 are still very much living in the community, living in Brookline, and the folks over 90 and even people over the age of 100 are still in the community. And so that's a major change to see such a growth in our senior population. And I think,
So Ruthann, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead. You had a question.
I was just going to ask you, are these people who were here and have just progressed to these ages, or are these new arrivals? Do elderly come to Brookline because we have such a broad array of services and such a really focused, fine program?
Yes. A great question, and the answer is both. So we see a number of people who age in place is what the term is.
Okay.
Who have lived in Brookline, since childhood, graduated from the high school and raised their families and now continue to live here. But we also see an influx of new immigrants, and we're welcome to people. Our doors are open to everyone. We have a very strong Asian population that comes to the senior center, and a relationship with the Chinese Golden Age Center in Chinatown to provide translation and support to that community.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then there is that population that you asked about, people who move to Brookline for its livability, high ratings. So if you live in your area of North Brookline, you don't need a car. It's highly walkable. Coolidge Corner has access to grocery stores, restaurants, retail, services. So it makes it a very attractive place to age in place.
Right.
And then there's another segment of our population who often move elsewhere, but when they hit the age of about 85 or over, and they start to have some medical problems, they want to come back to Boston to be near the really good medical. And often they want to be near their children, not necessarily live in the same home, but want to live in Brookline nearby. And so we see another increase of people moving in who lived all over. Some previously in Massachusetts moved back from Florida, others from New York, if that's where, if they have children in this area. So one of the programs that we do is called For Newcomers. And we do on an annual basis, we'll introduce newcomers to not only aging services, but everything that the town has to offer.
Wow.
So
go ahead.
That's a good program for people to know about if they're new to town.
So newcomers. Okay. And you have a newspaper, correct? I mean, people can get information, and if I'm correct, it's left around. I know I get mine at the Brookline Bank because in their little window, but do you leave it all around the town?
Yes, its name, it's called the Brookline Beacon now, is our monthly news. It is chock full of information, programs, services, articles. It's really a wonderful read for people of any age, actually, to know what's happening in the aging field. You can get it delivered to your home for a small donation. And you can also pick it up, like you said, at the Brookline Bank, the grocery stores, the libraries, number of places have it.
And it comes out the first of every month, Ruthann, or?
Yeah, towards the last couple days of the month, and it's also online.
Oh, it is online. Okay. Tell us a little bit about some of the fabulous programs that you offer, the activities.
Sure. And I want to also speak a little bit about the impact of COVID.
Okay.
So you want to start with that, and then I can talk about some of the programs?
Yeah, why don't we start about the impact of COVID, because I was going to mention that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. You said we're all just still struggling to wrap our heads around what we went through. And I think
Whoa.
older adults really experienced a lot of trauma around the forced isolation, the high risk that older adults were at, the illness, the death toll. I mean, all of COVID's impact was pretty dramatic. And our major concern has always been on loneliness and social isolation. And then that just got exasperated so terribly with COVID. And so much of what we do is trying to keep people connected into their community so that they're not socially isolated and lonely. So what we try to say to people is start with where your interests are. Not everybody wants to be an artist or do watercolors, but if that's your jam, as they say, you're going to find a class of many different art opportunities. And then if exercise is what's keeping you going, or your doctor saying, you're going to find dance classes, Tai Chi, a gym here at the senior center, senior yoga, chair yoga, a whole variety of exercises. For those who like to play games, you can do chess, you can do Scrabble, Rummikub, Mahjong. Again, if you want to learn cribbage or bridge, that may be an opportunity to teach somebody or learn yourself, or just find another person to play. Music, we do a lot of singing. There's choral groups that meet here and perform. There's other times great performers come in and do programs. So really it really is depending on what your interest or what your connection. Book clubs are another opportunity. Creative writing your memoirs. The list just is endless, because what we try to do is find a program leader or a support based on what people are telling us they're interested in. So we get lots of ideas from the people who come in. We get emails saying, I saw this in another community, or this is my specialty. And then we'll develop a program for people.
We're talking to Ruthann Dobek, who has been with the Council on Aging in Brookline for 40 years. Hard to believe. Looking at her, you would never believe it. It would look like she's just a newbie. And she's director of the Senior Center. I have two questions. How did you breach, and did you, during COVID, the isolation of your population? And what programs do you see for the future that you have not offered, but that you would love to offer?
Great questions. So part of what we had to do, like the whole world during COVID, was really pivot to providing some online programming. We were amazed at how many older adults took to Zoom and learned, and then started to go on to programs.
Oh, that's good to know. I was just going to ask you that. That's great.
That's good to, yes, it was a very important part of what we were able to do. But some people did not make that transition or didn't want to. So the one invaluable was the old-fashioned telephone during COVID. When you couldn't, visit with people, we had volunteers who were calling to make sure that people were okay, checking in, just sharing the day. We had stories of people that were reading poems to one another over the telephone.
Oh, wow.
Some really heartwarming experiences that way. So that was a little bit of how we coped during COVID.
That's big. That's big. That's huge.
Yes, and one of the programs that I wanted to share with you was around getting digital access to people. So we were able to get a grant, and the Brookline Community Foundation continues to support this program that buys tablets for low-income older adults and gives them a tablet. And then we have volunteers who will train people on how to use the tablets, so that all of the classes that are online and all the wonderful opportunities through the library that are now online, that we're getting those tablets into the hands of people who need it. So in the last year and a half, 2 years, we've given over 150 tablets.
Oh my gosh. How do they sign up for a tablet, Ruthann? Do they just call the
They can
senior
call
center?
us. Yes, they can call us.
And your phone
to do
number
that.
is? Your phone number is?
Sure. The main number is 617
617
730
730
2777.
27. That's easy. 2777. Okay. So if you call
And
the senior
anyone
center,
who is in need of a tablet, give us a call. And there's also, not only is it for that wonderful online, there's a major concern, Susan, about where we're going with being able to be digitally. You have to do, as you probably know, everything online today. You know, even
yes,
to sign up for a doctor's appointment, they're pushing you, do it online.
right.
And we have real concern for those people who either don't want to or can't access technology. And I think that's a growing problem in our society. I just heard a story that if you go to the Newark airport, you cannot buy a sandwich or a cup of coffee without using a smartphone.
What?
Yeah.
Not everybody can afford smartphones.
Exactly. They're not accepting, not only not cash, but they're not even accepting credit cards or debit cards.
What do they accept? Vino? I don't even know how to do that myself.
Yeah, they only accept Apple Wallet and these kinds of high technology.
Ruthann, is it because they don't have enough staff?
I'm not sure why, but it's a major concern.
Wow.
That people, and then just to give you another example, one of our social workers was in a doctor's office, and a frail couple came in. The husband was helping his wife in a wheelchair, very frail. It was very difficult for them to get there. And the receptionist said, "Oh, your appointment was canceled because you didn't confirm our text."
Whoa, whoa.
So fortunately, in that situation, our social worker quietly got up. She was there for her own medical appointment. It was it wasn't her job, but she quietly got up and intervened and advocated.
Good.
But you can see where this is a problem in our society of,
so what can the senior center do? Are you offering tutoring to your population? Do you offer classes? Yes. Can they come?
That's when you said about what are we doing currently or for the future?
Yeah.
So we have a wonderful group of teachers and volunteers that you can learn how to do things online, or that will help you, get your vaccine appointment or your COVID shot by coming into the senior center if you don't have access. And I really want to stress that for people who are listening. If you have any difficulty at all, come on in. Well, you can give me a personal call and I'll try to advocate for people around these issues, but we're also doing that classes and support around this.
And that would all be advertised in the Brookline Beacon, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Ruthann, this has just been incredible. You have a huge job ahead of you. Huge
Yes.
job to keep everybody informed and gathering. And I've seen just by my interactions and going to the senior center, you have a wonderful group of volunteers.
We do.
I didn't even know they were volunteers. I assumed they were regular staff, but no, they're volunteers and they are just as committed as if they were regular staff. So kudos to you. And
yes,
can you use
anyone listening wants to join our team? Yeah. We are always recruiting new volunteers. So
how do they do that? They call
our volunteer coordinator. Her name is Valerie Graff. And she can be reached. I'm going to give you another phone number.
Okay, we'll run these at the bottom. Go ahead.
617-730-2743 is her direct line. And she has wonderful opportunities. And again, we'll take ideas from people around what they would like to do to help out.
Volunteer coordinators, if you're interested in volunteering, call the senior center. I would imagine this is Valerie Graff is the coordinator, but if they just call directly, they'll put you through to Valerie, correct?
Correct, yes.
Unbelievable. You have a huge job. I never realized the outreach. I'm going to ask you a question, maybe a little dicey. So if you don't want to answer it, because we didn't discuss it, but I'm town meeting member in Precinct 9, and I hear wonderful things about the senior center because you're right here. We know about you. We know you exist.
Yeah.
But I've also heard sort of rumblings that other parts of the town have difficulty getting to the senior center, or they would like a satellite or a senior center in their area. Can you address that? If you don't want to, I'll understand.
Oh, no, it is part of, again, what we're, our vision for both the future and want to discuss options for both the town to consider. One area that we are very concerned about are people that live in South Brookline.
Yes, that's where I've heard it from. Yeah.
Yes. And we're always trying to either help people. One of the issues here is we have difficulty in our parking. The North Brookline, as you know, has very limited parking available. So one of the options is people can take one of our vehicles, we'll pick them up and bring them back. So they
need to know that, Ruthann.
Yes,
yeah, because if people knew that, I know they would come. But all I hear is the sort of
So that's one thing that people aren't always aware that they can do. But the second thing is we really try to there's a concept, it's called Senior Center Without Walls, meaning that we can be the senior center, not just in our building structure. And one of the ways in Brookline that we can do more of that is by partnering and strengthening what happens at the Putterham Library, for example.
Yes. Okay, great. Terrific.
So it's not always easy, as you know, to work and collaborate, but we have a very strong partnership with the public library and really push and advocate for more senior focused programs.
Excellent.
Currently,
that's so important.
For people that do live in that part of town, I know that they do a chair yoga class.
Yes, Fridays, yep.
The Friends sponsor that, the Friends of the Public Library, so it's free. We also have a book club at in person and online at Putterham. And then in the past, before COVID, they were doing some mahjong and bridge games at the Putterham Library. And we can do more about, those kinds of, bringing programs to that part of town.
Excellent. Go ahead.
We also would always are exploring, our senior center is currently, at its capacity. If you called me and said, can we book, you have to go through our program manager. And there's many times of the day that she doesn't have a classroom available for new programs.
That's good and bad. That's good
exactly.
to know.
So we are aware and looking to the future of saying, is there any other space for growth, or these what we call partnerships, so that we're bringing senior programs to all different buildings and parts of town.
Wow. In the last minute that we have, what would you like to say that you haven't had the opportunity because I've interrupted you too much?
Well, it's been wonderful. I would love to come back or have
Yes, you're
else,
invited. You're invited.
to have more of these conversations. The one other plug that I would make is that the Senior Center has the Brookline Senior Center Foundation, which is our nonprofit arm, similar to, Friends of the Public Library, Friends of Public Health. It is our foundation to fundraise and support our programming. The town only funds 63% of our budget. The remaining has to come from grants and private donations. So anyone who wants to help us out with a donation, it's also welcome, because all of these wonderful programs that I just described to you need financial backing.
Yes. Ruthann Dobek, Senior Center Director, I really admire your commitment for over 40 years and your enthusiastic persistence to provide the best for those of us who are progressing the lanes of life. I'm very grateful. I did, fortunately or unfortunately, have the need to contact the Senior Center. I had a bad accident and I needed services, and I have to tell you, they were fabulous. Your social workers came, they called me back to the point where they were like my mother, nagging. They were wonderful, wonderful. They didn't leave me alone. So I want to thank you. You're welcome to come back. I think we should make this a regular, because I think as the different seasons approach, there are different needs of our elderly. What I've become really informed about are about our sidewalks and streets and potholes and ice. So let's plan right after the new year, or in the new year. You will come back. I'm making a note.
Absolutely.
Ruthann Dobek, thank you so much, and continue your good work. And we're here to help.
Thanks, Susan. And anyone can give me a call for any issue that they may have.
Okay. Okay, that's it for the Safety Net. We'll see you next time.